Hi everybody, it's me, Sailor Mercury, Amy here, and today I'm going to talk about, probably one more time, then I'm going to move on from this subject. Okay, so today we're going to talk about Toon Maker's Moon. Remember when I said that Toon Maker's Moon was not done by Siobhan? It wasn't. Now, the reason why a lot of people call Toon Maker's Moon Siobhan's Moon is because for some reason they got it in their head that the theme music that was being done for Toon Maker's Sailor Moon, well, even though the song was done by Siobhan Entertainment, that was far as any dealing that the show had with it. Okay. Now, Toon Makers was involved in a bidding war, if you recall, with Deke Entertainment, and they were supposed to make introductional trailers. And these trailers were supposed to be for television networks to pick them up. Now, Toon Makers basically did not follow the instructions, and like a student in a classroom who basically does not do what the teacher tells him or her to do, he makes a mistake. What was Toon Maker's mistake? Doing a blend, a hybrid between animation and live action. Now, a lot of people are going to argue and say that Toon Makers was taking liberties. True, but maybe not the liberties that they were allowed to take. Yes, Toon Makers would have been allowed to change names or transformations or attacks. They would be allowed to do some edit work. But basically how they really screwed up was when they did the hybrid between live action animation. And that was where they screwed it up at. And that's why they got disqualified. And that was how Deke ended up winning the rights to the first 2 seasons and the 3 featured films, because even though people will criticize Deke for all the same for a lot of stuff, they stayed more loyal to the source material than Toon Makers did. Now, Toon Maker's Sailor Moon was an experiment because it was supposed to have been, I don't know, it was supposed to be the English adaptation, but not adaptation, the fact that they were just taking it and working with the original animation work. Taking it and making something completely original with it. Like, for example, Whose Line Anyway having an adaptation. Or Grudge Match being adapted, for example. Those 2 shows. That's basically what it was going with. Now, a lot of people are going to say that a lot of people will make the argument and say that the Deke version, even though there were multiple different changes to it, was still more loyal than the Toon Makers one. Now, the reason I'm making this video because I also made a couple of mistakes. Number 1, I said there was no Queen BERYL. That was definitely not true, because I've come across videos and photos of what Queen BERYL looks like. When I said there was no tuxedo mask, I was wrong, because there was a Prince Endymion. But he looks completely different from what he looks like, okay, in the original Sailor Moon. Now, beyond that, those basic characters were there, okay? And yes, Luna was white instead of being either black or blue. Pick and choose which color you think she was. Now, and that was the only mistake I made. Yes, it was true that Toon Makers basically did get themselves disqualified when making Sailor Moon, because they basically had to keep all animation work when doing it. Now, a lot of people And this is a lot, and a lot of people want to say, now, why would a lot of people think that called Toon Maker's Moon Siobhan Moon? Because some people gotten this into their head that Siobhan Entertainment was involved in it when really it was Toon Makers Inc. that was involved in it at the time. And I don't know. Basically, it was a form of Sailor Moon that never did see the light of day because it was a blend of animation and live action, and that was not what we were supposed to do. That was not what was supposed to be done. Now, it would have been nice to be able to have seen both versions of it and then compare them, but since it was rejected and since Toon Makers was disqualified during the promotional trailer phase, no one would never know exactly how it would have played out. If you go on YouTube, you will find that there is a called Crackhead Voice Acting Parodies, and they allegedly have the alleged first episode using pictures from from both versions, basically. More of a spoof than anything else, because Toon Maker's Moon will never ever made any episodes. So your guess is as good as mine of how it all would have worked out. And yes, there were a lot of, interpretations. For example, there was flying ships. Now people assume since they were sailor soldiers or sailor guardians or sailor warriors that would mean that they're flying on ships, because that was never in any version of Sailor Moon regardless. Not in the anime or the manga, the live action, stage musicals, or even the video games. And each one of them are a little different from each other, but with some similarities. Now, beyond that point, all I want to say is that I just wanted to clear up the mistakes that I've made when talking about Toon Maker's Moon, because the truth of it is that there was Queen BERYL, but she didn't look anything like her anime or manga or even live action or even video game counterpart or stage musical counterpart at all. And there was a Prince Endymion, but he didn't look anything like his anime, manga, live action, stage musicals, or video game counterpart at all. Because a lot of people are going to say, where were they? Because they weren't shown in an introductional trailer that Toon Makers made, so you could assume they weren't in it, but they were. Now, so that's about it. That's about it for me. I'm Sailor Mercury Amy, and I hope you enjoyed this video.